Sunday sit-down interview. I know Ohio faces a variety of challenges, and I'd like to ask you about some of them today. One thing that I'm a little confused about, I believe the two-year budget that the General Assembly is working on now is about $128 billion. Now, I think that's either close to or maybe a little in excess of the current two-year budget. Am I correct about that?
Well, yeah, but when you take into account things like Medicaid, which are growing at an enormous rate, you're going to go up. But when you take a look at the cuts in many of the areas, they're going down. It's just that there are some programs, for example, the programs for the poor, that what states have wrestled with is their inability to control Medicaid costs. Well, we have done that in this budget. Medicaid will still go up, but not go up at the rate in which it was going up. So, but when people, when they fixate on this number or that number, the bottom line is the budget is structurally balanced now. And we're not playing smoke and mirrors and all that stuff to get us where we need to get to, which is a stable financial future, along with the opportunity to continue to lower costs. Tim, you want to make a comment on any of this?
I think you covered it very nicely, Governor.
How hard, a lot of states are worried about the new national health care law and how it's going to affect Medicaid spending. How hard is that going to hit Ohio?
All right, listen, when you get an $8 billion deficit on your doorstep, you're not worrying about things 4 years down the road.
Okay.
I mean, Obamacare will make it, to drive up our costs enormously. And I'm opposed to it but we're doing things in our state where we're operating from the standpoint of creating a health care program that is future looking. In other words, when you are slowing the increase of Medicaid, some people would slow it by just cutting dental care for poor people. We didn't do it that way. We're trying to coordinate care. We're integrating physical health with mental health. And these are things that hadn't been done before. We're creating a medical home so nobody is confused about the kind of care they ought to get. And so all these things are putting us in a position of being able to manage our health care costs going forward, which is why we have so many partners with hospitals, doctors, mental health advocates, the developmentally disabled. But just to pile on Obamacare, it'd be a disaster for the state. Tim, you want to talk at all about we don't spend a lot of time thinking about this. The reason why we don't spend a lot of time thinking about it is we had enough problems. It's like, you got a tsunami on your doorstep. You're not thinking about what's going to happen down the road, so we had to remain focused.
We do know that in the out years, while in the early years, the federal government will pick up 100% of the cost for the expansion of coverage under the Medicaid program. In the out years, the state will be expected to contribute significant sums of money, which will present budget challenges for us in some of our future years.
The whole key is for states to design their own program. That's, be a laboratory for what works, and we can look around the country and see what works in one state. Maybe we can take some of it. I actually believe that our Medicaid program, reforms that we have in there, will be used as a national model, because people have a hard time understanding, well, how could you save this much money but yet have all these people for it? It's because we are partnering with the healthcare professions to say, look, we've got to get out of this treadmill we're on, which is driving up costs, and we need to get to a place where we coordinate care. One of the things we found about Medicaid is it's about 6% of the Medicaid population drives over 50% of the costs. So when you think about that, and there's a percentage of that population who are just high cost, there's nothing you can do about it, they're just very sick people. But there are ways in which you can manage the rest of the population to get them the care they want, but yet at a lower cost without having a default option being the highest cost programs where they don't necessarily get better care. So Ohio is leading the way on Medicaid reform, and we're really proud of it.
Here in West Virginia, under our previous governor, he tried some Medicaid reforms. One of them was personal responsibility agreements. The Medicaid clients signed them. Very simple. Do what your doctor says. Keep your doctor's appointments. Anything like that, any personal responsibility component?
Well, you know what, you can get people to sign, but it doesn't mean they're going to abide by it. What we want is care coordinators, somebody who literally will be in a position to manage that caseload, so that they're not confused about where they're going to go. I mean, for example, our efforts with nursing home reform. People need a nursing home, that's fine, they got to have it. We've got to have quality nursing homes. But if they're in a position where they can be in their own home and get some help if they qualify for a nursing home, then we want to provide that. So what happens? Well, the person's more independent, probably healthier, certainly happier, and we save a ton of money. That's the way we look at it. So, but personal responsibility matters. But for some of these folks, signing a document, I mean, it may make for a good headline, but I'm not sure it's going to. Look, one of the things we want to do is we want to have places where people can go when they get very ill instead of having to run to the emergency room, which drives up the cost of everything. So all these things are designed to coordinate, and I believe we're just getting started. Now I have an Office of Health Transformation and have a terrific guy running it by the name of Greg Moody, who could at some point come here and tell you about all the things we're doing. He's really the expert. I mean, as a CEO of the state of Ohio, my job is to find the best people I can find. I have the best budget director that Ohio's ever had. I've got a terrific guy running health transformation, but across the cabinet, whether it is the corrections, Department of Corrections, I have a man that has extensive experience, a warden for 4 prisons, also service in the private sector. Once I start micromanaging every element, that's when I fail. So people know where I want to go. They talk to me about innovation, new ideas, and I set them free to do their job. And we form a really good team. And frankly, we're direct, honest with one another. We have, I'd say, like kind of a family atmosphere. We all share in this. I mean, we share in the good and we share in the tough stuff. And that's the way that I've run it in 4 months. And I think whenever you start trying to know every detail of every program, that's when you become Jimmy Carter and you melt to the ground.
Yeah, that's when your helicopter gets stuck. Yeah, right. Let's move to something that I know is near and dear to your heart. In a nutshell, tell me what the difference is in your economic development program and what the previous administration had done for economic development.
Well, look, I mean, let's even go back farther. Before 1963, there was no Department of Development. Jim Rhodes, the governor of Ohio, the iconic governor of Ohio, had a thing called Rhodes Raiders. And they traveled all over. They were business people who, I guess, with public-spirited attitude, went out and brought businesses to the state. In '63, he created the Department of Development. Now, '63 was what, 37 years ago, 48 years ago. I'm a kind of a believer that every 48 years you ought to change things in government. Okay, but that department has become bureaucratic. It doesn't mean that people are bad or anything like that, but they've not been as responsive as we would like. Businesses have been a bit frustrated. So we have a new group of people in there, some new folks and some folks who have been there, who have been energized by the attitude we've had to basically get out there and talk the business of business to people who create jobs. We are also, of course, creating a not-for-profit entity called Jobs Ohio. And the wonderful thing about that is it gets you out of all the restrictions. You begin to be able to move at the speed of business rather than the speed of a statute. Statutes don't move very fast. I mean, I've seen glaciers moving faster. So creating Jobs Ohio, plus being able to move the liquor profits, 1/3 of which is used for economic development and 2/3 is used to grow government, is now going to be solely focused on being able to get job creation going. And so this entity is going to be unique. It will be staffed with people who really understand the different clusters that are important in Ohio. Tim was involved early on in this. Tim, any comments about this? And he remains very involved in this.
Well, I think the idea is that a dedicated stream of revenue that the the jobs Ohio can use to carry out its public mission of improving economic development opportunities for Ohioans, combined with the opportunity to have a different type of person who can understand business and talk to business, positions Ohio in a very effectively to go out and work hard to retain the businesses we have and sell the benefits in Ohio and attract other businesses here.
You know, we're getting, look, we've had some people come in from out of state, and we've had some success. American Greetings, D. Bolt, kept Bob Evans in Ohio, you know, helped to a degree on Goodyear. But there are lots of other things happening now. But we don't have as big a cadre of people in that position who are in that department who can go out and have credibility with CEOs. We have some, but not as many as we need. We have a limited staff. If you're going to do economic development, you can't do it on the basis of checking a box. You have to do it in a 360 manner. And we've had some results. We're going to have a lot more results. They'll be announced. You know, companies we talk to. For give you a good example, I mean, I found out about a company that was thinking about expanding their business in Michigan. The CEO was in Europe. I happened to know who the lead director of the company was. I called him. He said, well, you know, it's all about shareholder value. I said, yeah, but shareholder value is more than just some deal somebody gives you, because when you operate in the state, there are a myriad of issues that you have to deal with. I said, you ought to be, and he said, well, good point. He said, you ought to get the last and final offer from, because the other states are competing against us here. CEO finally, I talked to him once he got home, and he said, look, John, we're not moving to anywhere else. We're going to expand in Ohio. But I'd like you to meet with my people and see if you could help us figure out a way to expand this product that we're developing in this new business. My people from development who are involved in creating Jobs Ohio, and who, you know, one of them, Mark Kwame, he gets paid $1 a year. I mean, he's a business person. They sat down at the table and figured out a way, a very unique program that we think could be very helpful to the company and very helpful to everybody in the state. I can't talk about it now because it's not announced, but you have to be able to, so it involves, okay, getting to the lead director, getting to the CEO, putting your team together. And the comment I heard back from a university president who met with the CEO is, God, we met with normal people down there. So that's you know, that's it. Now we still have a lot of calcification. I mean, there could be calls that get missed, but we don't. But I understand business. I've been in business. You know, the problem we have largely in government today is we have people who never had any business experience, and so they don't really understand the urgency of what business thinks is critical. Or secondly, we have business people that don't understand politics. So they go in there and they flail around and they don't know what they're doing either. So the best combination are people who have experience both in business and in politics, who can take the best of both worlds and apply it out there for fixing your state or your local government or your federal government, for that matter.
Okay. I'm going to switch gears. Under Senate Bill 5, public school teachers wouldn't, as I understand it, receive annual step increases automatically anymore. They would be eligible for merit pay increases. Now, I know you've expressed some concern about getting that right.
Yes, I have.
Tell me what you feel about how it's possible to measure merit in a teacher for purposes of pay. What are we learning?
Well, I think one of the things we want to do to measure a teacher is how much did a kid learn during a school year. If a child is not learning anything during a school year, that's not good. And so we've actually invited the teacher community in Ohio to participate in helping to set the criteria. Honestly, I had an argument with Michelle Reed, a great reform chancellor, former chancellor of District of Columbia, because we have a lot of reform in K through 12. I mean, we've expanded vouchers, charter schools. If a school is not performing bottom 5% for 3 consecutive years, teachers can take it over, parents can take it over. We have a whole series of things. We just passed Teach for America, where it changes the licensing in Ohio, so passionate college students can come in and teach in a different format once they're certified. But also the idea that we want to pay teachers on the basis of performance is, I don't know any place else where we don't do that. And so some teachers will say, well, I just don't want to be judged by my principal because my principal doesn't like me, or I don't want to be judged by parents because I give them a hard time because they're not paying attention to their kid. I'd rather go with a test, whatever. We have time to figure this out. But the idea that you're the last person in, you're the first person fired, where we can't figure out a way to make a fair and honest assessment of teachers and pay them what they should get. I'd like to pay teachers $100,000 a year if they're changing our kids' lives. So we've asked the teacher community to get involved. We've had some response. I don't know. I couldn't define it right now, but we're going to continue to ask for their help. And we will develop criteria. This is not unusual. It's not just Michelle Rhee that believes this. It's Bill Gates, who's resigned, left Microsoft and has dedicated a lot of his life to this. He believes in performance pay. So we'll work it through, and if in a couple years, I guess was it a year, 2 years down the road, if it doesn't fit, we won't do it, but we're going to get it done. We will get a performance pay program, and we'll look at how they do this all over the country.
Do any, and I hate to betray my ignorance, but do any other states do it that way?
Well, I think to some limited degree. I don't know, but we should certainly have Bob Summers and Wayne Struble, who are working on this.
Yeah, I really don't know. I should.
Cincinnati just went over to it.
Have they?
Voluntarily.
Cincinnati
Public Schools just said, we're doing it.
They have already implemented it?
They just made the announcement last week, so
Okay. Interesting.
Well, there's probably other states that do it to a limited degree.
I have a district in my house district that has actually been working on it for 3 years.
Yeah, so you just want to have criteria that's fair to teachers. You don't want. I think part of the problem with the standardized tests have been that the teachers felt that this test was shoved on them, and they didn't really have much input into what should a test look like. You want to have the teachers involved. Now, initially, when this was brought to me, I didn't like the idea. I said, I don't think we have enough criteria to do this, and I'm uncomfortable. I went home and I thought about it, and I said, what, are you kidding me? Everywhere in America, we try to pay people on the basis of how they do. We can certainly do it with our most our most prized and loved things in our society, which are children.
Another school district question. Some school districts in our area are in financial trouble. A few of them, such as Blair, truly don't see how they're going to balance their budgets. What, if anything, can be done about that in Columbus?
Well, I mean, first of all, and I'm going to let Tim talk about this a little bit, we have structured our school funding formula that if you're a poor district, you get more state help. Secondly, one of the tragedies in Ohio is we are 46th in America in putting dollars in the classroom. I mean, that means that's according to Dayton Daily News, 46th in terms of putting dollars into a classroom. Where's this money going? So I believe that we also have given the schools some tools to deal with their financial problems. People pay a little bit more for their pension, a little bit more for their health care, shared services, a statewide health pool. And we've given them all these tools. I don't know if they've embraced them. What happens is a lot of people say, well, we don't have enough money, but we don't like your tools. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's kind of silly. We're giving you the tools, use them. You can pull yourself out of a jam if you use the tools. No district in Ohio is being cut by more than 7.9%, and most of them are being cut, all monies, by less than 5%. So I don't know what these districts are saying. I mean, if we went in and looked at their books, we might be able to figure that out rather quickly. I mean, I don't know about Blair and what their problems are, but we think we've designed a pretty good program. Now, we're also working on a new school funding formula that is essentially going to put dollars behind pupils, so we get dollars in the classroom rather than dollars in the buildings. But that's for another day, and it's not anywhere near finished.
Very interesting to see, because I think most teachers will agree with you, whether they like other policies or not. If we could just get more of that money in
Absolutely, and that's what we're at. I mean, I've been an advocate of that from the beginning. Tim, anything you want to say about the school funding?
Well, clearly the school funding formula is designed to target resources to those districts that really do not have the capacity to raise revenue themselves. And so to those districts that have lesser property tax capacity, more state aid is provided. We were very careful in designing our foundation formula to be mindful of districts' ability to raise money when we put the budget together. Federal stimulus monies have expired, but I think it was pretty clear to people that that was one-time, those were going to be one-time resources. There are significant savings opportunities contained in the bill, because significant opportunities for districts to work with other districts or other local governments to potentially share services. We had a provision in our bill was introduced that would reduce the pension contributions that the public employers, including the school districts, would have to make, that would save school districts across the state. I believe it's $230 million a year, which would go a long way toward addressing the modest reductions. It's $580 for everybody. For schools, it's
even for local governments. Which,
right, it's $570 for all public employers across the state. That goes a long way toward addressing some of these, some of the fact that there are reduced resources that are available. And then if school districts take advantage of the opportunity to control their costs through Senate Bill 5, they will, my sense is, be in pretty solid shape with regard to their finances. Now again, there's different circumstances on the ground that each individual district face. Ultimately, if school districts do, in Ohio, if school districts find themselves in significant financial difficulty, they can be declared in fiscal watch or fiscal emergency, and then there is a financial planning and supervisory commission that members of my office participate on to go in and review the operations of the districts and try to lend them some assistance in getting their books back in order and getting back to financial solvency.
Okay. Switching gears again.
One other thing that we have to talk about when it comes to these school districts, and that is if you take Bel Air, for example, part of the most serious problem we have is that it's an exodus of jobs and people.
Absolutely.
If you are a state that is not putting yourself in a position for economic growth, and you lose your young people, you lose your families, and you lose employment opportunities, you don't have any revenue. So the one thing that people have to face up to is Ohio must be put in a position of where we can create jobs. And if we keep monkeying around with this and not facing the most serious problems, which we are currently doing in the budget, with Jobs Ohio, with the Common Sense Initiative, to repeal rules that don't make sense, to the fact that we want to align curriculums and have teacher performance, which drives up the quality of our students, you're in a losing war. And so this is all about economic development, and everybody must share in the effort to get there, because everybody will be healthier once we start creating jobs in Ohio.
Absolutely. Two quick closing questions. You're more familiar than most people, I think, in Columbus with how things work in Washington. You have an excellent reputation among Republicans. There has been some talk that you might make a good Republican candidate for vice president, especially in view of how important Ohio will be in 2012. If you were offered the #2 spot on the GOP ticket, would you take it?
No. I have a job to do here, and my job. Look, I said to my wife, "Sweetheart, look, we're gonna have a target on our back. We're gonna lose our privacy. It's gonna be tough on the family. I think I should run for governor. What do you think?" She said, "Well, it's fine with me. Just be sleeping outside for the next 4 years." So I did this, took this race on, because this is my mission. I'm here to help Ohio. I'm not here to help John Kasich. And frankly, going to a job like that, how would that be helping me anyway? But no, I have absolutely no interest in any other position. In fact, when I go to Washington, I break out in a cold sweat, so I try never to go.